Welcome back to this second half of Downloadable Content, our discussion of Metroid and Donkey Kong. We will now go into Donkey Kong in this second half. Donkey Kong, the oldest of the bunch so far, turns 30 this year. So it's probably older than all of us here.
Yeah,
So
probably.
wait, who is the oldest? I'm 26, so...
Oh, Ryan's definitely the youngest, so...
Yeah, I'm 21.
Okay, so I am officially the oldest. Great.
How does it feel, you old fuck?
Where's my walker?
Just start calling him Tella.
Booty Bard!
Just start calling him the Spoony Bard.
Great. Now I have an inkling to play Final Fantasy IV again. Thanks, Brian.
No, you're
Thanks.
very, very welcome.
I hate you so much right now.
Thank you. I love you too, sweetie. We go to Donkey Kong, which was created by Miyamoto.
God.
Bum bum ba 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 bum bum ba 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 bum.
And released in the it was an arcade game. It was released in 1981. This was Nintendo's first serious attempt to break into the North American market, which at that point all we had was Atari, more or less. It was one of the very first platforming games. I mean, it was very simple. Ape kidnaps a princess named Pauline, and the game's has some strategy elements. You have to dodge, you have to climb up, floors and levels, dodging barrels, and once you get to the top,
What was very interesting is Mario was originally called Jumpman, and he was not a plumber, he was a carpenter.
He was a carpenter, yes. This game introduced us to the character that would eventually be called Mario, although he was called Jumpman! And
Doing!
And the game only had 4 levels.
Only 3 of them make the NES version.
It had 4 levels, and every time you beat the 4th level, the game would reset itself, and you'd hit start again, and the difficulty would get harder and harder.
Quick question, who owns the, wait, I could just look it up. Who owns the current Donkey Kong record?
For high score? I don't know.
Yes.
I think it's Weeby.
Hang on, I'll look it up real quick.
While Stats Goes looks that up, we will...
Wait, I looked up... not Blue Book! Damn it!
Did you say cocksucker? Constitution Hall.
Billy Mitchell still holds it.
Long high score. Billy Mitchell still holds it?
Yeah.
I know he just opened up an arcade down in Orlando, Florida at the airport.
There needs to be more arcade shops.
But
he recaptured the world record for it on July 24th.
I just put in Donkey Kong High Score, and it just put in Donkey Kong High School.
I was a graduate of DKHS.
Is there really a school called Donkey Kong High School? That would be hilarious.
I would love to go to that school.
If you get your degree in bananas.
Do you have to know the DK rep to go there, though?
Oh God, no! Ow, my brain!
Alright, enough of that. Anyway, it exploded onto the arcade scene, and suddenly, You had high score challenges left and right. People were spending hours and many quarters to play this game. As you've mentioned, Billy Mitchell, and a documentary was made on the success of Donkey Kong. I mean, this really spawned popularity, you know, and the attempt to break into the North American market was very, very successful. It was very, very popular in arcades and ended up being a gigantic commercial success.
Just blew up.
Because of the success of the first game, this naturally, invariably, launched a sequel, Donkey Kong Jr., released a year later for the arcade. Similar style of gameplay as the original Donkey Kong, but this time Mario is the antagonist.
I think the only time that Mario is the actual villain of a game.
Yeah, I think so too.
In this case, I think you were playing as, obviously, Donkey Kong Jr., hence the title, trying to save Donkey Kong from imprisonment by Mario.
Which, as we find out later, Donkey Kong Jr. eventually becomes the next Donkey Kong.
Yes, we do.
But
Wait,
I'm getting
plot?
ahead of myself.
There's plot here?
Yes, actually.
You'd think between all that, there'd be... Again, a very big arcade success. You know, because, again, similar style of gameplay, and yes, I think the only time you'll ever see Mario as a villain. He was the antagonist.
Did you ever play Mario as Missing?
Yes, sadly. What about Mario's Time Machine, though? I have played that. I have played that, sadly.
Mario Quota.
You know, it sucks being a Nintendo fanboy some days.
You know, you have a little bit more of a Mario quota because Mario is in the first two Donkey Kong games.
Yes, he is. He wasn't in the third one, though. It was released in 1983 in the arcade. It was not as successful, partially because there was a radical departure from the formula that made the first two games great. Platforming, you know, upscaling, leveling action.
Who was the main protagonist in that? I remember he had a name, I just can't think of it.
I don't remember either, and...
Okay, Stats will look it up.
No, thank you, Stats. But Donkey Kong Country 3 actually played more like a first-person shooter. Which,
I wouldn't know, I never played it.
Which was odd. Well, we weren't around then.
Yeah, I am the oldest, playing in '95, so...
Yeah.
Oh, Stanley! He is a Bug-a-man. So, an exterminator.
Jumpman, Bugman.
Next we'll have Rugman. Okay.
Thank you so much. Not as successful as Donkey Kong 3, but again, the first three arcade games, that's where Donkey Kong made his living, and then those games would eventually get ported over to the NES. My first introduction to Donkey Kong would not come until 1994 for the Super Nintendo.
I think that was all of our first introduction.
Yeah,
to Donkey Kong.
one of my favorite game series ever. Donkey Kong Country.
Donkey Kong Country was...
Ba-da-da, da-da-da-da.
Oh, that just goes to show you the legacy of the series right there. It was the second best-selling Super Nintendo game ever.
And this was the game that said that Donkey Kong Jr. was in fact the next Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong was now Cranky Kong.
Ah, I didn't know that.
That makes sense. Wow, that makes sense.
Yes,
that actually
doesn't
makes
it?
sense. I'm surprised.
So now I have to look at the
continuity come in. I think it was Donkey Kong Country 3. I think that was introduced.
That puts a whole new light on this series. Interesting. But anyway, it was also the start of what we call the rare era of Donkey Kong.
Yay, rare.
Before Rare decided to go, AWOL on Nintendo,
Yeah,
but besides that...
This was the start of Rare and Nintendo being great bedfellows together.
They were lovers.
Well, this was one of the very first video games, period, to use pre-rendered graphics. If you remember, I remember the graphics being very stunning. I had never, ever seen graphics as good on a video game as I did with Donkey Kong Country. Up until that point.
The only game that rivaled it was Super Mario RPG.
Yeah, and that was made by Square. So it was, it was just absolutely beautiful to look at. It was just an amazing, visually stunning. It was the first Donkey Kong game that was actually very story-based and much more adventure. Game. It had over 40 levels. It introduces Diddy Kong.
Pre-jetpack.
Pre-peanutty mushroom. No, wrong series.
Pre-peanut gun?
Yeah, pre-peanut gun. And this was also notable because this was the first Donkey Kong Country game in which there were two different varieties of multiplayer. I spent many, many hours playing with my stepbrother. You can play either co-op or go head-to-head.
Which is always fun to do the co-head, or
Co-head?
Go-head! Great job, buddy!
The competition.
Yeah, I mean, you could go head-to-head or play co-op, or of course, you can play solo. But this was just absolutely beautiful. Hours and hours of time devoted to this game, trying to find all of the hidden levels.
What was the max percentage? I think 102%, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, this was 100. First game was
No, they actually went beyond 100% for full completion of the game.
Well, how could you have more than completed?
Yeah.
That's mathematically impossible.
I can actually bring that up.
It happens a
for
lot
you.
in games.
I'll say, they have a lot.
What did
actually bring that up for you?
Well, what did the game assign you suddenly an extra credit bonus question?
Damn it, Brian. But I do know that Donkey Kong Country 3, that the max percentage was 103%, and I believe Donkey Kong Country had 105, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, that's right, because you had to answer an essay question comparing Donkey Kong to Final
Oh,
Fantasy.
for the love of God, Brian!
It was a Regents exam question.
Well, to be fair, they do that a lot, is the completion
Fuck the
thing
Regents.
is just to mess with people, because if you really wanted to complete the map for Castlevania Symphony of the Night, it's a 212.4%.
How can you have... I won't get into the mathematical argument because my blood will shoot out my nose. But
Okay, Donkey Kong does not start with the R.
What?
Apparently I am
101%.
failing... 101%, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, who's failing here?
Me, on an epic scale beyond all recognition.
Again,
Apparently-
I'm really good at Google.
that's...
Apparently, Doraemon is my translation for Donkey Kong. I have no idea why.
You lush. Moving on.
Was that part of the Mayan runes? They predict video games besides the apocalypse.
But Donkey Kong
Jesus, they
Country
know
also
everything.
brought us King K. Rool.
Yes, go on, Chris. You haven't spoken in a while. Go on, talk a bit. And he naturally vanishes.
You can't call me out like that.
Here we can, as a podcast, that's what we do here.
No pressure.
No, it was... I love Donkey Kong Country Returns. It was probably my favorite in the series. It was a lot better than basically any of the other ones besides Donkey Kong Country Returns. Like, it was the first game to have, like, Dixie Kong and Funky Kong, Candy Kong.
Yep.
Everybody, the hot monkey.
The save point, yes.
Yeah, it's
You
Candy
mean,
Kong.
you mean the monkey with boobs?
Yeah, the hot monkey.
Yeah, Candy was only in Donkey Kong Country 1. Dixie was in 2 and 3. We had Kiddy Kong, which was only available in 3. Was that a cat?
Right, because Donkey Kong Country Returns 3 was the one that you didn't get to play as Donkey. You played as Dixie and Kitty.
Yeah.
Yes, and Donkey Kong Country 2, you can only play as Diddy and Dixie.
Right.
Right, because in Donkey Kong Country 2, I think you were trying to save Donkey Kong.
Yeah, he got
Precisely.
kidnapped.
So, he
I
probably
don't
went...
remember what the plot was for 3.
What was the one with the weird hovercraft?
With the
I think
weird
that was-
hovercraft, that was 3. That was 3.
Yeah, that was 3. But I mean, but as you know, to further elaborate, you know, on Chris's point, I mean, the legacy of the Donkey Kong series. The first one especially set the bar. And we all were doing it just a few minutes ago. The soundtrack.
Dun, 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 dun.
We'll probably do it for the rest of the episode.
See, that ringtone's not coming through because that person never calls me.
Well,
And that was just, you know, it's my firm belief that the soundtrack makes or breaks a lot of games, and I think Donkey Kong Country further exemplifies that because how good was the Donkey Kong Country soundtrack for both 1 and 2, and even 3 to a lesser extent, but
it's one of my favorite video game soundtracks, period.
yeah, I mean, they really did a great job, from the overworld theme to jungles to vine swinging to even the underwater theme. It was just, you know, they exemplified both not only great soundtrack to go with the great gameplay, and the fact that they had incredible, you know, graphics on top of that. No wonder it's widely considered as one of the greatest games ever.
It was just beautiful, absolutely beautiful, and of course the final boss battle, Captain K. Rool. That was just
Rool.
You know,
Do you remember how hard the game was, though?
It was.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it was hard.
Like, the snow level with the snow constantly falling and shooting from the barrels?
Yeah, that was probably one of the hardest levels of the game. One of my favorite levels, though, Minecart Carnage.
Oh, the Minecraft.
that- I remember playing that, and it would make April sick just to watch me play that level.
Ron,
She
you've been
could not
quiet for a
watch-
few minutes.
Well, no, I've been quiet because of the fact that I played Donkey Kong, I've beaten Donkey Kong. I'm pretty sure I own and have beaten all of them. But it doesn't stick out in my mind to me. It really just is not as memorable as some of the other games. I agree the soundtrack is really fantastic, and I like the platforming. It just doesn't stick out to me, though, as much as some of the other stuff.
Okay, that's fair. That's certainly a fair assessment.
While Donkey Kong never achieved the same commercial success as Mario, Metroid, Zelda, etc., you know, it did have its merits. It did have, you know, a very simple but addictive gameplay, along with a fantastic soundtrack, and at the time, state-of-the-art graphics. At this point, this was really unheard of on this system, let alone future systems.
Oh, I agree. It was a very fun game. I had a lot of fun playing it. I wasn't as a completionist as some of the other people, but for whatever reason, I wasn't as impressed by Donkey Kong as other people were.
And that's reasonable, because, you know, to each gamer their own. Everyone's gonna have a different opinion on what they feel is, you know, their favorite series. But, you know, I think we just have, you know, you may not like Donkey Kong, but at least respect for what this particular gaming series did to the video gaming industry.
Oh, I respect it for what it did, just because it was a very popular game. The sales by itself just showed how popular it was and how much people enjoyed it. I respect it for that. I'm not going to call it a bad game. It just doesn't stick out in my mind. That's all.
That's fine.
And that's fair.
That's-
I mean, it certainly, you know, the country sticks out better in my mind, better than the N64 one. God, I want to purge that from my memory.
We'll get there. We move on now because of, obviously, the success of Donkey Kong Country 1. We'll move on to 2 and 3.
2 was better than 1. I will say that now.
It was released.
Disagree.
It was released in 1995. It was a critical and commercial success, extremely successful sequel. Introduced Dixie Kong. There was more of an emphasis on hidden levels and extras this go around. Hold on.
Okay.
And also more of an emphasis with the two main characters, Dixie and Diddy Kong, both having different abilities. For example, Dixie Kong could glide through the air with her Sindel-like hair there, and
it's the Nintendo version of Tails.
Very good, actually. I didn't even think of that.
That's in my opinion. You know, that's what it was. That's what she was.
So,
I mean, she was not useless by any means, but
no, and you know, it was definitely. I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed all three. I didn't enjoy 2 as much as I did the first. Chris, you said that you disagreed with it being better than 1.
Right. It's just because I just felt like 1 was like a new experience that a lot of us have never had before, and then with 2, basically all they did was rehash it and gave us a chick that made the hard jumps easier.
Dixie Kong brought about, he did bring about a sense of ease, but, more so than that, the reason why I think 2 was better than 1 is that whole exploration factor. They brought upon additional levels, an additional challenge, an extra final boss for us to explore and defeat. It was very much harder to achieve 100% than it was in Donkey Kong Country 1. And between that and the additional animal companions you had, I think the gameplay was a little bit tighter. It controlled better in my opinion. And that's why I think 2 was just a better experience than 1, because it took the original concepts and just improved on that. The fact that Donkey Kong was not the main character of the series, I think didn't take away from how great it really was.
Okay, I mean, I like I said, I enjoyed 2 immensely, and I thought the extras, the extra levels and whatnot, I thought they were a nice change. We move on to Donkey Kong Country 3, which was released in 1996. At this point, it wasn't Donkey Kong Country 3 was the least successful of the games, partially because 1996. At this point, the N64 and the PS1 were in full swing.
Yeah, that really didn't do it any favors, and plus, there was really no. Everything kind of seemed rehashed by this point.
It was definitely, at this point it was starting to be old hat. In Donkey Kong Country 3, it was much more non-linear. Thank you, I agree too.
Sorry.
It was much more
hangover bronchitis.
Much more non-linear. You could stray from set paths, but again, critically successful, but not commercially successful again, because the N64 and PS1 at this point were in full swing. So
the only thing I really remember about DK3 was that weird hovercraft thing.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, I didn't get that either, but, it was a means of transportation, and, despite all the flaws that it had, and despite the kind of the rehashing it was still a good game.
Oh, it was still enjoyable, I mean, I'll give it that, but again, at this point, 1996, it's a been there, done that, and, yes, we'd moved on to the N64 at this point, so...
Because Mario was out!
It's me.
Can we just skip over the DK for the 64?
I'm sorry, but...
We can... I mean, I actually never played DK 64.
Don't.
Yeah, just word of advice, buddy. Do yourself a favor and don't play it.
If he hits you with his coconut gun, it's gonna hurt.
Well, as I've never even played it or even remotely seen it, what made it so bad?
Basically, it was like... Have you ever played Gauntlet?
Yes.
It's kind of like if you were playing Gauntlet, turned it into a Donkey Kong game, gave all the different characters their own powers and needed each one to get through a certain point, but you had to find them first to unlock them to use them.
You had to find them because you had to find them so you can progress further along in the game.
It was really annoying.
Yeah, well
Extremely
said.
annoying.
Well said.
And you needed that stupid power pack for the front of your freaking N64 to play it.
Yeah, that.
Oh, it needed the extra peripheral, the controller pack.
Yeah.
I think it was one of 2 games that needed it. I forget the other one.
But it was just annoying to get the old pack out. And when you needed to get the old pack out, it was just... once I got the power pack in there, I just left it in. I didn't care.
You also lost your saves, too, when you took that out.
Yeah, so I just left it in.
Yeah,
It was just too frustrating.
It was a largely forgettable experience. Just it seemed like it was nothing that Banjo-Kazooie didn't already deliver by this point.
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me, was just a rip-off of Banjo and Kazooie.
Yeah, I mean, we're still continuing the Rare era.
Not
to me,
that it was.
Banjo-Kazooie was better.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. But not that Donkey Kong 64 was a bad game per se. It just never reached the same heights that Rare already accomplished with the Banjo-Kazooie series. And unfortunately, that's an unfair comparison, but an accurate one.
Yeah. And
that's what made Donkey Kong sit on the shelf for God knows how long. When was Donkey Kong 64 released? Like 97,
99.
99.
It was 99.
So what, 11 years between that and the next major Donkey Kong game?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not counting Jungle Beat because that was retarded.
Yeah, I mean,
we don't count it either. Don't worry.
In the meantime, I mean, you had the Donkey Kong Land series, which was basically the counterparts to Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy. You had other games in the interim like Jungle Beat and Mario vs. DK.
And Smash Brothers.
And Diddy Kong Racing.
Actually, that was quite enjoyable, alright? I don't care what anyone says.
But,
actually, I never played it, so I really can't say anything about it.
The planes were fun.
Okay, racing on airplanes. That was at least enjoyable.
Yes, it was. But you're right, Nick. 1999 was the last major Donkey Kong game release until we get to Donkey Kong Country Returns, which was released last year for the Wii.
That's fun.
And
that was fun and hard.
That's fun.
That is hard.
And be that as it may, this is part of Nintendo's. Nintendo is currently in a throwbacky sort of mood. They're resurrecting these old classics and polishing them up for the new generation, which I don't mind. I love it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, it's okay. It's okay to reminisce on your past, and Donkey Kong Country Returns is a complete exemplary of that. They, alter controls a little bit, but it, for the most part, it was an overall fun experience and hard as freaking hell.
That's fine. I mean, there's a lot of throwback to the Super Nintendo's trilogy, including the soundtrack. They brought back a lot of the memorable tunes. This was
the damn peanut gun.
Well, yes, the peanut gun. I know.
I thought
it wasn't too bad.
This game was not made by Rare. By this point, Rare had decided that it was done with Nintendo and is now currently in bed with Microsoft.
So Rare sleeps around a lot.
I guess.
And Rare decided to, take a dip in the toilet afterwards.
Unfortunately, it means that we're not going to find games like GoldenEye or Perfect Dark on Virtual Console anytime soon.
Or ever.
But in the meantime, I have not finished Donkey Kong Country Returns. I have started it, but one of the first things I noticed right off the bat, aside from the lack of Kremlings, which I was a little disappointed about.
You and me both.
Was that the fact that the game made me feel like I was 10 again, and that was the key.
Yeah, it made you feel like you were a little kid.
I was
That's
glad
why
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Nick.
That's that's why I was glad when I heard that Nintendo passed the reins over to Retro Studios, the same makers behind the Metroid Prime series, because I knew this was going to be a good game, that they were going to take the essences of what Donkey Kong was all about and turn it into something that we would remember.
And by and large, they were pretty successful with. It was a critical and a commercial success. It was definitely up for some Nintendo Game of the Year discussions. Unfortunately, Mario Galaxy 2 would be the crown and glory.
And rightfully so.
Yeah, that was a really good game.
See, download last episode.
Last recorded episode. You mean download episode
5, 6,
Product
7, whatever.
6.
Product
8,
placement.
12, 14!
No, it's 6. I just listened to it.
Yes, download episode 6.
One,
no, this
2, 5. Three.
Unfortunately, I mean, last year, 2010, we saw a lot of good Nintendo platformers. We saw Kirby's Epic Yarn, Epic Mickey, Donkey Kong Country Returns, and unfortunately, the plumber got it all.
How's that, unfortunately?
Well,
Because it wasn't his favorite plumber.
yeah, it should have been Super. It should have been Super Luigi Galaxy.
Luigi was
Bring back
playable
Luigi's Mansion.
tons of times there. You just chose not to.
Hey, you can play as Luigi in Mario Galaxy too.
Yeah, I know.
I'm telling Brian that.
I know that, and I fully intend to once I start it.
See, now that's your fault.
Actually, no, I did start it. I put it down, though, when I found out that that it took place 100 years after Mario Galaxy 1, and nobody got any older. But
it actually makes sense once you get to the end of the game.
yeah, I'm sure it does. And I went 100 years, and Peach gets kidnapped again, and oh, well, that's nothing new. But
By Bowser, once again.
Nobody learns their lessons. One of these days, somebody should walk up to Bowser and actually give him the dictionary definition of insanity.
No, you just introduce Bowser to Sigmund Freud. There's a difference. You just sit him down and you go, tell me your symptoms.
He has issues.
Brian, can I ask you a question about Donkey Kong Country Returns, though?
Go ahead.
Have you gotten to the levels where it's black, where you're the black silhouettes?
Yes, there's an introduction.
They're amazingly beautiful levels.
They are. It's graphically stunning. And I have seen a few of those silhouette levels. It's a little jarring though, because trying to get your way through the level is interesting, because instead of seeing Donkey Kong there, you have suddenly this Mystery Science Theater silhouette inspired sort of level, which is interesting. It just makes it a bit difficult because you can't tell where certain things are, because now it's one black blob.
Yeah,
When I first started playing Donkey Kong Country Returns, I was like, okay, it's Donkey Kong Country, just on my Wii now, and there's no Kremlins. Okay. Oh, and Diddy and Donkey have own separate powers, and I can't play with, Diddy running behind me in single player, and I can't switch over to him. Okay. But then when I got to those silhouette levels, I was like, alright, Retro, you did good.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Good job.
They are very, very beautiful. And, I'm going to get back to my Nintendo games once I finish playing this current stretch of very serious games.
Define very serious.
Well, I plowed through BioShock 2, Dead Space 2.
I hate it. That ending was ridiculous.
Have you been playing through Final Fantasy 13 at all?
Oh, I need a summer vacation for Final Fantasy 13.
I'm actually midway through Chapter 11. If you can get past the 25-hour mark, it is epic.
Oh, I know, and I'm sure, it's going to.
I'll have to keep that in mind too.
But
I'm up to Sid, and I can't play anymore.
But in the meantime, I'm going through this stretch of serious games, and I know that before long, I'm going to want to go back and play some very silly, happy games like Epic Yarn. And,
I haven't played...
That is retarded. That is gay cute.
I haven't played it yet.
Kirby's Epic Yarn, everything about Kirby's Epic Yarn is just utterly cute. Puddles of cute. But anyway, back to Donkey Kong.
Yeah, we're off topic.
But the visuals are very stunning, and I look forward to plowing through the rest of it. So there we are. There we are, people. We've gone through, and I will ask the same question I did at the end of the first half. What was the appeal of Donkey Kong 25 years ago, and what will its continued appeal be?
If I may jump in here first, I believe it's the challenge. It is the entire difficulty from what we've seen in the original Donkey Kong arcade of trying to jump barrels, dodge the fire, dodge the trampolines that constantly are the cause of my freaking death!
All right, Lewis Black, calm down.
To Donkey Kong Country Returns and the freaking tambourines and instant death and the rising lava that continually owns my ass every single day. You know, I think at the end of the day, it's the mere challenge of it. That's something we don't get from Metroid, from Zelda, from Mario. It is that hard difficulty that I, as a hardcore gamer, crave.
Okay, Ryan.
Well, having not played, the original arcade games from what I can tell you from back in the Super Nintendo, it, like with Nick, what he said, it is a challenge, but it's a fun challenge. You have immense amounts of fun while doing it, and that's what you need to look for in a platformer like Donkey Kong. Not to mention, good quality, fantastic soundtrack. That's all those elements you need to make a perfect platforming genre. Nintendo did it right with Donkey Kong.
Yeah, it's not frustrating. It's not like Alone in the Dark.
No, it's not frustrating work. It's fun play.
Right. And that is a huge difference. It's not like Alone in the Dark. Thank you, Ooball. Where you just instantly die. There is an element of fun to the challenge, and Ryan nailed that on the head. That is an important factor to the challenge.
Alrighty, Chris.
With Donkey Kong, I can't wait to see what Retro does with them, with the characters personally, because it originally started out as the arcade game, and then we got what we know and love from Rare, and now that Retro's taken, the reins of the series, I'm really looking forward to see what they can do with it. I'm looking for a port to the 3DS at some point and stuff like that. So I just think that the fact that the game is so good and the challenge is there for hardcore gamers, I'm really looking forward to the next 25 years of Donkey Kong.
Sounds good. And Ron?
I think one of the main draws for Donkey Kong was the gameplay. You guys mentioned the gameplay. It's a lot of platforming. The soundtrack, I think, is also a really big draw too. I also think it has something to do with the fact that you're playing as like an animal compared to like humans. Just because of the fact that it just makes that sense of cartooniness to it a lot more valid and enjoyable. Like you're almost playing like a Bugs Bunny in a Bugs Bunny cartoon, and you control how it ends.
Okay, I can certainly understand that. For me personally, because Donkey Kong Country was such a pivotal game for this, not only for Super Nintendo but for the industry as a whole, I think going forward, because we all played Donkey Kong Country. I mean, as I said earlier, Donkey Kong Country 1 is the second best-selling Super Nintendo game. So, I think for future Donkey Kong games going forward, it's now Retro's task to make a fun, compelling, and challenging game, but also keep some of that nostalgia that we've come to love from the original Donkey Kong Country trilogy. And I think this Donkey Kong Country Returns pulls it off really well.
Do you think now that Retro Studios did complete Donkey Kong Country Returns that you think that Nintendo wouldn't trust Retro with any future Donkey Kong games? Because we really haven't heard anything about it since then.
Well, it's not surprising that we haven't heard anything new since then, because again, Donkey Kong Country Returns was just released last year.
Yeah, it hasn't even been a full year, I don't think.
No, it hasn't. So
It's been about 6 months.
So naturally, we're not going to hear anything right away about the next game.
This game came out November 21st, 2010. So it's only been out 6 months.
Yeah,
so it's not.
Sorry, Brian, but naturally, it's something you got to give it time.
Yeah, you're not going to hear a whole lot of future games just yet. I mean, I'm hoping with the success of the game that Retro keeps going with it. I mean, obviously we see that Nintendo is not hesitant to loan out its characters.
My only hope for the future country franchise, country games, that they would at least include the Kremlings. That's my only wish. If you're going to truly make it old school.
The problem is, the Kremlings belong to Rare.
Okay, you made your point.
I mean, obviously Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong's related...
Wait.
Hold on.
Then I'll let you finish your point, but then I'll make a counterpoint.
Donkey Kong and its related characters belong to Nintendo. Although I don't know. I don't know if Dixie... Well, no, Dixie's in other... The other cast of Donkey Kong characters are in other games not made by Rare, so...
Yeah, and here's my counterpoint to that, is if the Kremlings really were under the properties and copyrights of Rare, then explain Mario Super Sluggers.
Yeah, I realize that. I realize that now. But...
Okay. That's just all I'm trying to say is...
Yeah, I realize... I'm like, but... I know there's probably some hairy issues with Rare.
No pun intended.
Regardless, it's had a nice successful reboot for the Wii, and hopefully it continues on. It continues on, and with Donkey Kong Country Returns as successful as it is, I think it's definitely got a good start going forward. So, there we go. Fun series, very nostalgic, some of the best video game music we've ever heard. And yay on you, good on you, Nintendo. In our next episode, we're going to have our last of these milestone anniversary sort of gaming franchise talks. We're going to go to the baby of the group, Resident Evil.
Babies with brain cravings.
The baby of the group. It turns 15 years old this year. So it's...
So it's an annoying teen.
It's an annoying teen. Yes.
Well, given Resident Evil 5, I'm not surprised.
With this was another series that totally invented a new genre. It totally invented the survival horror genre, taking full advantage of the PlayStation hardware to be able to tell its story.
Until Silent Hill outdid it. Oh!
Actually, I like them both about the same. But Resident Evil came first, so...
Sorry, I just had to throw that in there.
Yeah.
And Clock Tower came before that.
Yeah, dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun.
But... That is...
Dun, 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 dun.
Thank you, Peter Griffin. So that's the next episode we've got to look forward to, is Resident Evil. We'll be talking about the series and how that has evolved, and how it's redefined the survival horror genre, and continues to. And we'll see what we feel that series has going forward. That is on our next episode of Downloadable Content. So, once more, I'd like to thank Ryan, Ron, Nick, and Chris for their contributions to this fun little chat.
Always a
You're
pleasure
welcome.
to be here.
Anytime.
And we will see you on the next episode. Have a good one, everyone.
See you later.
Bye.
Peace out, everyone.